All right. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming out to Startup Boston Week. My name is Hanny, and I'm one of the organizers of the event. I just need to pull up something. So on the screen right now, you will see the events that are going on currently. The one that you're in here is Brand on a Budget, the best free tools for bootstrapping and marketing. We hope that you stay, but if you were looking to go to Success with Less, it's very easy to navigate there. Just go to the agenda tab, and you'll see the other event going on right now. You can click join to go into that one. In that same agenda tab, you'll also see just all of the panels and events that we have going on for the rest of the week. So highly encourage you to check those out. While we wait for a few more people to join, just a reminder that we absolutely love your questions. Definitely want to get them involved in this discussion. So in order to do that, please use the Q&A tab on the far right of your screen. Submit any questions there, and then our moderator, Janice, will work those into the discussion as we go. Lastly, we also have an awesome social media competition. You'll want to pay very close attention to what our speakers are saying. If you post a quote from an event on social media using the hashtag SBW2021, you'll be entered to win one of 5 $100 gift cards to a Black-owned business in Boston. So without further ado, I will pass things over to Janice to kick the panel off.
Thanks so much, Hani. And I'm really excited to introduce myself and the speakers for this panel on talking about brand on a budget and what tools, tips, and resources we have to share around marketing on a budget for a startup. And I'm Janice Drew Bennett. I am currently the startup founder and also a strategic partnership marketing manager for Mequilibrium, which is a Boston-based company founded in 2010. It's a health and wellness tech company, and part of the marketing team that's growing there, while also having been a founder and someone who's created marketing budgets on a shoestring as well myself. Let's go around, and Danielle, do you want to jump in and introduce yourself?
Yeah, I can kick us off. So my name is Danielle, and I am most recently the Director of Content and Community Growth at a early stage startup called Nuff Said. But within the last couple of weeks, I actually started my own consulting business focusing on early stage brands and founders with their content and marketing strategies aimed at building a lasting connection with the people they're trying to reach. I have a little bit of a non-linear path in marketing. I started my career in finance and found myself a bit creatively bored. So I started a brunch Instagram called Boston Brunch Guide and really did a lot of the things we're going to talk about today, just bootstrapping and learning all of these strategies, and then actually use that to transition into marketing, where I've worked with mostly early stage companies and founders and CEOs on content and social media strategies.
That's a great background, Danielle. And having started your own company and working full time for others, I definitely understand that dual role. Amobi, I would love to hear your background and share with the audience your experience in marketing.
Yeah, so first and foremost, thank you for having me. I'm Amobi Okugo, a professional soccer player, and I also run A Frugal Athlete, which is an online financial media platform that promotes prudent financial practices and smart career decisions amongst professional athletes and student athletes. Our goal is to essentially help them make, manage, and multiply money through financial education and athlete empowerment. And when it comes to marketing, I had to learn the hard way. For me, I'm so used to being on the other side of like doing endorsements and stuff like that, but having my own business and like trying to figure out growth strategies, it's been quite the process, but it's been fun. And I've learned a lot throughout my time starting the business.
Yeah, that's definitely a unique perspective as a professional athlete and having your own business as well. Kurt, what about your background?
Yeah, my name is Kurt Nichols. I'm the founder of Glade Optics. We are a brand that sells ski goggles, ski helmets, smattering of other ski accessories, as well as sunglasses. I started the brand myself about 4 or 5 years ago. My background was actually in market research. I was working at Forrester Research in Cambridge for a number of years, and I started Glade largely as a side project. So I was definitely doing the 9-to-5 hustle and then nights and weekends working on Glade for a number of years. So it was definitely a long journey to build the brand to where it is today. But we really built the brand on the back of bootstrap marketing to where it is today. You know, we've grown it to a 7-figure brand with a great team behind us. So it's been really fun to sort of focus on exactly what we're talking about in this session.
It's great to hear, Kurt. And so before we jump into questions, I'd like to ask the audience a question. We came up with a poll to see what topics you'd be most interested in. So if the organizers can pull up that poll, it is discussing a few different topics in terms of budgeting and tracking marketing return on investment, what having tricks and tips on that, what might be some of the best promotional hacks that you use, what are some of the best free or very cheap apps and tech tools that you use for marketing, and what's the best way to use people resources. So if people can take a minute to answer that poll, we can see what the results are. And it actually looks like people are more interested in some promotional hacks, some free or cheap apps, and a little bit interested in the budgeting, as well as the best way to use resources as well. So I'm sure we'll cover all those topics, but keep in mind as speakers, what promotional hacks do you have, and what are the free or cheap apps that you use as we kind of go through our list of questions. So let's pull that poll down and jump into our panel questions. So let's start off with that budgeting question. Why is a controlled marketing budget so important, and how do you measure your marketing return on investment? Danielle, do you want to kick us off, and then anyone can jump in?
Sure. So I think about marketing budgeting as, especially in an early stage where there's limited resources and money, as a trade-off. You're basically trading off your time and energy for money spent. And that is the lens I view a lot of those marketing budget decisions through. And it's really important because you need to have the time and energy to be focused on the really important things that you need to be doing, and then using tools to kind of fill in those gaps, right? For the things that you don't need to use all your brain power on all day, especially when you're, switching off hats between CMO, CEO, and everything in between. So that, I think, is why it's really important. It also helps you manage your time. I think for direct ROI, or measuring marketing ROI, you have to really, I think the most important thing for me has been making sure I'm working with someone who actually understands the value of marketing, because there are a lot of things that you can't directly measure that have a huge impact. So that's kind of one piece of advice I would say.
Yeah, I would certainly echo what Danielle just said. I think for Glade in the early days, budget was so important for us because we didn't have a budget, right? So when I think about marketing, I think of, what can we test and then eventually scale? So for us, it was a lot about, okay, what can we test cheaply? And what can allow us to get more information? So it was really about throwing as much as we could against the wall, seeing what we could measure, and then finding success channels within there and trying to double down on those.
Yeah, I would say for me, I think, I didn't really have experience from the marketing side, like growing a business. So I was doing a lot of different things, like things I read, things I saw on YouTube, and I was trying to find results, but I didn't know how to measure it. And for me, I wanted to be more efficient in how I went about my marketing. So I had to create a budget, and I had to create, kind of build a foundation of, this is what I want. This is my intended target. This is what I'm going to use, and then kind of go from there. Where initially I was just like, this person did that, I'm going to follow it. This person did that, I'm going to follow it. And it wasn't efficient. And so that's why now I have a strategy, a budget, and kind of like an intended purpose around what I go for.
Absolutely. And I think testing is essential to see what does work for you, because what works for someone else might not work for your company. And in an earlier panel at Startup Boston Week, there was an investor who said, before you spend any money on marketing or sales, make sure there's product market fit. So doing that research on, do the customers want what you're selling, or do you need to revise what you're and testing is often a free thing to do if you go out to market on social media or research. And Kurt, you talked a little bit about doing research. I'm curious to hear a little bit more about what tools you've used for that specifically, as well as some of the other ways that you've accessed some of these free apps and tools that people are so interested in hearing about.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. When I was preparing for this session, that was so top of mind for me. Was just, I think, the most important lesson to be learned, at least in this sort of side of things, is that customer research is king. So we do a ton of it. We're actually just getting off a long series of 20-minute phone calls with our most recent, call it 30 to 50 customers, and those proved totally invaluable for us. And that's free, right? So we took the list of however many most recent customers you have, reached out to them and said, hey, we'll give you a discount on your next order if you just give us 20 minutes of your time. And I think you'd be surprised. I think we had a 60% conversion rate just on those emails. So people are pretty willing to talk to you. So we're big on doing the in-person or over the phone calls, certainly, to sort of dig deeper into why people are purchasing from us and what we could do better. We also do a ton of survey work. So we do, you could use Google Forms, that's free, Typeform. Really sort of, there's any survey tool out there, I think, is totally worth putting on your website or sending to customers after they purchase. We use something called Grapevine on our website. This is pretty commerce oriented, but if you purchase from us, you get immediately hit with this tool Grapevine that says, hey, how'd you hear about us? And that's helpful for us to figure out if we're not able to track it through like a conversion pixel or an email UTM or something like that. At least we can hear from them how they found out about us. So there's dozens of tools out there to sort of get information out of your customer. I would encourage anybody to triple down on those.
Moby, could you share some of the tools that you use as you've evolved?
Yeah, so for me, I didn't really understand analytics, so I was just using my Twitter and Instagram, and I just use polls. And I would be able to understand, like, all right, would you guys rather have me talk about content around budgeting or content around investing? And put like a simple poll on Twitter or Instagram, and then kind of get the feedback from there, and then build out my content strategy or my marketing strategy moving forward. And then as I continue to like develop and evolve, I have Mailchimp now for newsletters, and I can like be more strategic in terms of asking specific questions to my audience. But initially, it's just the social media that I had, Twitter and Instagram, and kind of going from there.
Danielle, I'm sure you've used Twitter and Instagram and other social media platforms too, with all the roles you've held in marketing. Which ones do you find the most useful, and what other tools would you want to add to the mix?
Yeah, in terms of social media, I'm going to use a marketer's favorite answer and say it depends on where the people you're trying to reach are hanging out. And I've used both Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, pretty much any of those to hold conversations. And I was going to say, for research purposes, and you can also turn this into content, the best thing that I've done is just reaching out and talking to people, just having a conversation on, hey, I'm working on this thing for other marketers. What would you hop on for 15, 20 minutes to talk about the things that are top of mind for you right now. So you can actually make your research do a little bit of content work for you as well, and get more mileage out of those conversations.
Yes, and I think one of my favorite platforms is LinkedIn, especially for a B2B business. I think Twitter, Instagram, Facebook may be better for B2C, but if you're targeting businesses as your audience, I've found LinkedIn can be very useful for getting visibility in groups, for both Facebook groups and LinkedIn groups, and posting direct messages to people to set up those meetings. Because I think in order to have those conversations with customers, you have to reach out, whether it's through social media messaging or email, whether you're using a paid tool or free Gmail, just to send out the survey. It takes time, and that's part of, I think, that the investment is not just investment of money, it's investment of your own time or a team's time. So what are some of the challenges that you've faced when you're looking for scaled versions of your budget constrained, organization?
I would say, first of all, I don't think you necessarily need scaled versions of everything. I think there's a pretty common misconception that if it doesn't scale, then you can't keep doing it. But to this day, some of the high ROI stuff that we do is putting pen to paper and sending emails. It's cold emailing people, or it's hanging out in a Reddit forum for skiers or newschoolers.com. It's just really sort of putting the time in, because at the end of the day, that's kind of the work, right? The work is trying to bring people into your brand and into, finding out about who you are and what you stand for. And I think a lot of that is predicated upon you adding a personal touch to things. Certainly, as you grow, you do need to find those scaled channels, and those are out there. But the way that we approach those is basically just, again, testing. If we're seeing positive results early on, then we're willing to scale that as much as we can.
I think one of the challenges for me is just the bandwidth, because this is not a full-time thing that I'm doing right now. So it's how can I be most efficient with the hours that I do have to maximize the marketing that I am doing. So, much to Kurt's point, my biggest strategy is trying to be like the mayor of my niche first and foremost before I try to go on a regional or national level, trying to go where everyone is at first. So, for example, FinCon is ironically in Austin, Texas. So literally this morning I was there. That's kind of my niche of people I want to connect with in terms of like learning about personal finance strategy, content strategies, marketing plans around that, and then kind of building from there and moving forward.
Yeah, and I would really agree with what Kurt said, that not, everything has to change when it's scaled, and some things can't really be scaled on, a super automated level. I think the challenges for me have been identifying those things that can be automated or outsourced that you really shouldn't be using your time on. It's either too tedious or too manual that can be automated, and that does take time to set up. And in the moment, that can feel like a really difficult thing to spend time on when you have all of these other things going on. But if you kind of zoom out and realize how much time that's going to save you down the road, that's something that is really worth investing the time up front on.
Yeah, and Amobi mentioned an event in Austin, and I think events are often a great strategy that take time, but can also be a great way, as this event that we're here at, where you meet people, build relationships, and find ways to collaborate. So I'd love to hear some of your stories about how you've done data swapping or collaboration, as well as thinking about ethics when you're reaching out to people you don't know, or other, as you're growing your startup or scale up. Do you have some stories that any of you can share around collaboration, data swapping, or ethics?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'll kick off. I think for us, this is maybe our biggest channel in terms of highest ROI and most effective for us. And it's largely free. So what we do is we find other brands that are in adjacent categories. So we sell ski goggles, right? So we'll go out and we'll find someone that sells a ski jacket, someone that makes skis, and maybe a ski resort based in, who knows, Colorado, let's say. And we'll say, hey, why don't the four of us team up? We all have the same exact customer profile. Let's either do an email giveaway or let's put on an event together. Let's do a booth at a trade show together. Let's do something, because there is clearly overlap between the people that we are selling to. So I think my number one tip for this particular panel would be partner with people in your industry, because we to this day, I'm still partnering with people that I met 4 years ago at a trade show or something like that. And it's been huge for us.
I would say also there's been partnerships with competitors in some spaces I've been in too, where we may have a data set and our competitor has a different data set, and we're willing to share with each other to bolster our own presence. So that's another thought in terms of partnerships. And one of my favorite topics, since I'm in strategic partnerships. Danielle and Amobi, do you have any thoughts or stories that you can share around data sharing, collaboration, and ethics?
Danielle, would you like to go first? Or
Sure. Yeah, I think collaborations are a huge growth lever, and they really pay off because you're able to then develop relationships with those people as well. Something that's worked really well for me, and this is on more of a B2B side, is and like I said earlier, having conversations with people within the industry, and not just, the ones that everyone's heard and seen on LinkedIn 6 or 7 times, but the people kind of in the trenches doing the work, and talking to them and pulling out a little bit of their perspective, and then sharing that with a broader community, that there are lessons to be learned. And that way you're kind of like, from a content perspective, you're kind of like the moderator. So you're facilitating these conversations and learnings, you're making people more visible in their industry within their job. And that goes a long way in getting them to be an advocate for you, a brand advocate. And that is worth more than any amount of marketing budget, is having someone out there advocating for you.
Yeah, just to like reiterate that and to touch on some things that I've done, starting out early, it was more about highlighting other folks and like collaborating that way. Being able to, luckily I had a podcast, so being able to tell like a little bit about their business, kind of highlight them. My big philosophy is that when you give, you'll end up receiving. And that's kind of been my approach in terms of figuring out ways to collaborate, figuring out ways to be a value add. And because I'm kind of strategically focusing on people in my niche or my companies that are in a similar space, I'm almost like a complementary service, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I love to hear how all of you are collaborators and look for partnerships in your industry and the ecosystems that you work in, and building out events and building community. So are there any specific resources that you use for community building? I heard podcasts and would love to hear a little bit more how you found those useful for community building, or what other kind of hacks you might have to grow your community. Moby, do you want to start?
Oh yeah, so podcast it's the best for me because I don't have time, or I don't really like writing, and the fact that you can do a lot with podcasts from the standpoint of, we talk about branding on a budget. If you video podcast, you have a YouTube video or video clips that you could put on, LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok, whatever you're comfortable with. You have the audio. Then if you want to transcribe it, you can make it into a blog. So podcast is a hack for me. And whether a podcast is 15 minutes, 30 minutes, or an hour, it's a lot easier to connect with different brands or company execs to have a moment of their time to talk about their business or talk about something that they're doing, or like announcing a launch that they may want to launch on your podcast. So for me, that's been the game changer in terms of being able to like get people to collaborate with a Frugal Athlete.
Yeah, podcasts are great for that. And also, speaking of free or inexpensive tools, the one I love for podcasts is Descript, because you can actually make audiograms within it. You can get the transcript, and you can actually edit on a text basis, and It's awesome.
I'm writing that down. I'm not familiar with that.
I'll send it to you after.
Okay, I've heard of Headliner, but not Descript. Oh, I'm writing that.
Oh, you're gonna love Descript. It's like an end-to-end like podcast machine. It's great. And I was gonna say something in terms of reaching out to people. I like to approach it as though I'm kind of like at a party. As opposed to kind of walking around with a megaphone being like, this is what I do. This is what I do. Talk to me, especially on LinkedIn, which is just like so inundated with, I'm going to send a connection request and then immediately a sales request. You're not going to get a lot of collaborators that way. And a lot of people don't realize that you need to be a little bit more strategic in your reaching out to people that are within the same realm as you. Not going to go and reach out to like the CMO of Nike at the moment, probably someone a little bit more like on the same level, a little bit more of a peer as well. So that's another approach I take to collaboration.
I love that. Yeah, something that I've been doing that I think works really well sort of in that same vein is that we as a brand obviously have an email list, and we are, sending out email newsletters fairly frequently with like product updates and inventory updates, things like that. However, when we are sending those emails, they do not come through looking like super glossy images, really polished, professional. It's entirely text-based and it's signed by me. So it comes off as if, you're getting an email from your friend. And the idea behind that was similar to what Danielle was talking about, in the sense of like, just talk to people like you would be talking to a friend or family member. So anytime we have a product release or anytime we have anything sort of commerce related, it's still me saying, hey, just want to give you a quick heads up. We're back in stock. Here's a link, no pictures. And then I'm out of there. And we have found that even with some A/B testing has been really successful. I think also part of that is that we get a better sender score from email providers because we are not loading it up with a bunch of images. So that the inbox actually treats it like an email rather than a promotional email. And then quickly, another thing that we have done is we've created this YouTube channel that is like the most low budget YouTube channel of all time. It's just one of my friends following me around with the camera as I go skiing, and we try to shoot an episode like once every 2 weeks. But we're seeing good growth there. And I think it's a really good way for people to just get to know the brand, right?
Yeah, I'm thinking of all sorts of tools that I've used. And when you talk about email, Moby, you mentioned Mailchimp, which has a little cost, but it starts out free. There's ConvertKit, which starts out free as well. I've used yet another mail merge with my Gmail to create a draft message in Gmail, like you said, that's text only, that's coming from me, and personalizing it with fields in a spreadsheet. So that's another hack that I've used to send out messages without an email system yet. Any other tools or and just off the top of my head, from a community perspective, going into Be Connected, and I've added some links. So my own company website, my startup is Inkwhy, which I put a whole bunch of resources on there as a knowledge sharing site. And there's Be Connected, there's Lunch Club, there's a whole bunch of networks that you can go into and get connected with people that you're looking to be connected with. So I'm curious if others use different tools to connect with others, or how you build your network beyond social media.
I'm honestly a huge fan of the Slack groups. It's just easy. It's already in my workflow. I don't have to go to like another tool to speak with people. I've used Circle before, and I like it for more like, I guess, content-based communities where, maybe there's a lot of courses or something going on. But Slack is really great. And there's a lot of great ones I've made or I've joined within marketing that have led to some of those collaborations we've talked about in just learning about some of these free tools. Superpath is a great one for content, and FemStreet for tech. It's for women in tech, which is a great place that I've met a lot of people, and Demand Curve as well. And you are really with a group of people that are learning marketing and they're talking about what they're doing. And those have been highly valuable for me. And most are free, some are paid, but $10 a month, and it easily pays for itself.
Yeah, so for me, fortunately, I've been fortunate enough to have a good connection just because of my playing career and some of the relationships I made. But outside of that, I'm a big fan of Lunch Club. I like using that. Slack as well. Discord has been getting pretty popular, but it's just not enough bandwidth. And then because of my sector, Twitter, and then actually making Twitter lists and following select hashtags, you're able to. Oh, sorry. I think a question came up. But you're able to you're able to kind of follow who you want to follow, and then through that, and if you engage in the community that you're trying to be a part of, you'll naturally build that connection.
Love that you said Twitter lists. They're like one of the most underrated hacks out there for actually connecting with people and getting the content you want to have.
Yeah, totally. I will echo everything they both just said. I don't have much to add there.
And then lastly, Clubhouse is really popular. I've been using that as well because it's kind of more direct in terms of, all right, I want to follow this. All right, I'm going to follow this. And then kind of gives you a chance to speak up as well.
Yeah, I had been doing a weekly Clubhouse room as part of a club, and that was generating some relationships. And it's actually something I put a pause on right now. So I think different platforms might be useful at different times or stages of what you're building. Danielle, you mentioned Slack, and that reminded me of Mighty Networks as a place where you can also find communities or build your own community. Join Hub is also something that was founded by one of the co-founders of LinkedIn, and there's events you can search there and connect with people on joinhub.com. And then there's also meetup.com, Eventbrite. I mean, all of these sites for events are searchable for finding people. And I do see a number of questions and comments on the side. So I'm going to put up this one by Satish on talking tools. What do you guys think of chatbots on websites? Do any of you use chatbots or other tools?
We use chatbots. It's a great tool. It's a time suck, I'll say that. But we have tested our site with a chatbot and without a chatbot, and we have seen higher conversion rates with the chatbot on there. And by time suck, I guess what I mean is that to set it up and to make sure it's working efficiently does take a lot of time. And then we do have someone who is, working the customer service type of role and is ready to sort of jump in and make sure that if that bot is still rolling and they think they need to step in, that they can step in at any time. But I think 100%, if you're thinking about doing it, you should at least test it because it does really well for us.
Yeah, I'm not currently using chatbots, but I am exploring like text SMS marketing, text messaging, just to help with bandwidth, and just the conversion rate is a lot better. So I've heard. So if that's a version of chatbots, I'm not sure.
I've had a lot of success with chatbots in terms of converting site visitors to subscribers. So if they're on a certain blog post on the topic, we'll suggest something else in that realm of like, hey, do you want to sign up for this newsletter that we have going on, this show, this something? But like Kurt said, it is a bit of a time suck to get set up. But I think it's one of those things that if you're testing it and it's working, it's worth the time investment.
Yeah, I have a chatbot on my own website, but I don't monitor it, so it hasn't really been effective. But it can collect email addresses and kind of, and I think auto bots can be helpful just to be there for when you can't be there. And I've also tested out Norby when you mentioned SMS marketing. It's a low cost way to kind of message people when you have a video that's going out, or kind of building your text messaging list can be also something to try out. And somebody posted this about, can we get a list of all the tools you guys are mentioning really fast? If during a lull or if someone else is answering a question, you can remember some of the tools that you've mentioned, please put a link to it in the chat. And I'm sure if there's a recording of this, we can go through and compile and message guests or attendees the full list and compile, because I think we all have some really great resources, and that's part of what people are looking for as they come here on how to market on a budget and what tools they can try out. And then specifically for email platforms, what are you using other than Mailchimp or I mentioned ConvertKit and yet another mail merge? Are there any other ways that you like to send out emails, or whether it's a newsletter or that more personal look? And Danielle, maybe you can share what you use.
Yeah, on a personal level, I honestly use Substack to get started, just because it's easy and again saves a lot of time. And when I'm working with a brand or business, I love HubSpot. I really do. It's just great to use. You can really grow into the platform, and they've really invested in a lot of email capabilities over the last couple of years as well. And I believe they have a pretty good free version. They kind of have something for every stage of your company and journey.
Yeah, for me, Mailchimp and HubSpot, those are my two. I try to keep it really simple. I was definitely thinking about converting over to Substack just from the standpoint of like being a creator and having that capability. But by the time I was going to switch over and everything, like, let me just stick to what I'm good at right now. And then hopefully as I build my team, I can, get over.
Yeah, we run on Klaviyo, and I absolutely love it. It's been a game changer for us. So for those who aren't familiar with Klaviyo, it's very similar to Mailchimp, except for the fact that you can sort of customize a bunch of flows, and there's sort of one more layer of customization. And so what we do with Klaviyo that we really like is that if you are browsing our website and leave, we have a flow for that. If you are adding something to your cart and leave, we have a customized flow for that. If you if you purchase a particular product, we have a specific flow for that. So it might be like, hey, you purchased our Challenger goggle. Here are the conditions you should wear your Challenger goggle in. Here's how you clean it. And then we have those emails going out every 10 days. And that's just a really good way for us to sort of keep top of mind with our customer. So we're big fans of Klaviyo for sure.
Yeah, I think there's all sorts of tools you can use for emails, and you can scale with it, or you can port it over to something else that stops serving your needs. So that's always something to think about. I'm going to put up another question here. Considering analytics for an early stage company, would you focus on customer growth or retention, and why?
The age-old question. I guess I'll speak from my personal experience. I mean, we're selling a product that frequently is purchased once and then sort of forgotten about. So ours was definitely customer growth in the early days. We are starting to expand our product line, sort of in the wake of increasing prices on, Facebook and Google and things like that. It just makes more sense for us to try to sell into our existing customer base. So I think it depends on your product, right? If you have a subscription product, then certainly retention, I think, is probably paramount. But if you're selling a product that is used 3 days a year, maybe you should focus on customer growth.
Yeah, I would echo that, and also say that when you are working on a subscription basis, that retention is a piece of growth, because the majority of your revenue is going to come from existing customers. And if you focus on making the experience really great for them and you're being really responsive, they are then also going to become advocates and go out there and recommend you to friends. And that will help you continue growing beyond where you are.
Yeah, so for me, I'm more focused on retention, trying to keep them locked into, what we're doing and what we're serving, whether it's, the content that we provide, the courses, workshops, and then, much like Danielle said, hopefully through that strong retention, the age-old phrase is you want 1,000 super fans, and then from there, they'll do the marketing for you. So hopefully I can build that foundation, and then customer growth will follow from that retention that I built.
Yeah, I think growth and retention are hand in hand, like you've all said, and making sure your customers are taken care of is key to growth. So here's another question from Alaska. Do you have any recommendations for event or social organization marketing or limited time offer marketing?
For me, I like the scarcity approach marketing, so for example, I do like courses, or I'll do like a webinar, like with 25 spots open, and like kind of like the scarcity model, like, all right, 5 spots filled, 10 spots left, by a certain deadline. That's helped me in terms of like filling out some webinars or like events. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but over the course of the amount of times I've done it, it's been more on the positive side. But that's my answer when it comes to like limited time scarcity marketing.
And while you're talking, Amobi, I'm going to just mark that question as answered. And if Kurt or Danielle, you think of anything else, you can jump in. But there was another question for you, Amobi, about how you're soliciting podcasts, or if they're coming to you. And if you were soliciting, how would you do it?
Oh yeah, so it's a combination of both. So there's different podcast marketplaces where you can like put your podcast information on a marketplace, and there's companies or agents that will allow you to find guests. They'll do the work for you. I also just cold email or use relationships. One thing that I like to do is after I interview someone on a podcast, I always ask them like, if you or me, who's someone that you would recommend for me to in your network that you would want me to interview. So that's helped a lot. And then my team of interns, they do a lot of the groundwork in terms of, doing some research, cold emailing, different things like that.
Yeah, speaking of interns, that leads to a good question about how you're leveraging a team, and how have you built your marketing team and access to people resources, and also how do you manage your time between marketing and other startup duties. So any of you feel free to jump in.
Yeah, I think depending on the stage of your company and the industry you're in, I think like any full-time hires or people that you're adding to the team are best as kind of that like Swiss Army knife marketer. They can do a little bit of everything. They're good at working with creatives. And then for the more kind of specialized or technical tasks that really require expertise, I think it's so worth the money to hire a freelancer or a technical writer for something like that, or like a really good designer if you're creating an asset you're going to want to go and use for those kinds of things. I've used virtual assistants in previous roles, and I think that they can be a lot of help, but the issue I have with it is just to make sure that it's an ethical setup. A lot of them are being paid $1 an hour, and it's just really exploitation. It's not it's not really a hack, and there are like so many good ones that you can find and actually pay a living wage.
Yeah, I've definitely researched sustainable virtual assistants. Go ahead, Kurt. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to add, I think it's about playing to your strengths. If you're someone who thinks of yourself as a good marketer or a creative marketer, then great. You should be spending more time doing that. If you think of yourself as someone who's more like analytical and better at sort of maybe the paid social side of things, or you're better at the finance side or the accounting or whatever it is, just make sure that's what you're spending the most time doing. So to give you sort of a concrete example, I'm not very good at the paid social stuff, right? Like I understand the Facebook ad platform, I understand the Google ad platform, but I'm not an expert in it. So there's a lot of stuff that I'm missing. So that was a signal to me that, okay, maybe I should be outsourcing this part of it to either another team member or to an agency that we can find that's better at it. So I think in terms of resource allocation, especially as a founder who's bootstrapping something, do what you're good at and do that all the time, and then try to outsource as much as you can.
Yeah, so for me, something I struggled with is, and it fits into the theme of this, branding on a budget, was I'm not paying this person for that. I can learn it myself, watch a couple YouTube videos, do the research, but then the time involved doing it. So sometimes you got to pay for the work because it's going to save you over time, and the long-term ROI of paying an expert in that space can greatly help you. So that was something that I definitely struggled with the first early years, and understanding like, no, this is not the cost of it. This is just, this is what it's going to cost you, but the back end, the ROI, the time saved that allows me to do other stuff, goes a long way. For me, understanding what I'm good at, which is, connecting with people on a personal level, using my social media platform to grow my company, bartering. I'm really big on bartering. So even if it's like helping them out in something that they need outside of their business or whatever, connecting them with like tickets to a game in exchange for it. I get as creative as possible, and then kind of go from there.
And you mentioned the interns. How do you find interns, or how do you have a whole operational process you've set up?
Oh yeah. So there's Handshake. Handshake is a platform that you can use to find interns, and then through my relationships with different schools, I sign up for their like internship programs. So I put my business on the profile, kind of tell them what they're looking for. What positions I'm looking for, and then kind of go from there. Whether it's going to be part-time, like a full-time, or for school credit hours, and go about it that way.
I've also used care.com to find people, and that's a tip someone told me early on. If you want to spend time with your kids, then you're going to be having as much time with your business. So it's clearly I want to spend time with kids, but at the same time, if there's help drive them places, a family that can help, finding the people who can support you while you're growing up is, I think, really important as part of time management.
Yeah,
that's a great hack.
Yeah, that is a great hack. I've heard that in terms of being able to order food a couple nights a week too, of like, okay, yes, this is $15, but it would take me like probably an hour and a half to cook, and I have some work to do. So
producing is also productivity with food
Oh yeah.
with marketing. So if you take those videos and do it all one weekend, it can save you a lot of time, and you can have the content if you focus on that one task at one time instead of trying to do it all at once.
That's a really great point. Yeah.
Yeah, that's my favorite hack, actually.
Yeah.
I don't do it as much as I would like to, but
yeah, that's my favorite thing. And usually when I enter a company that has any form of content, I'm like, okay, nothing new. What do we have to work with here? How can we turn this into other content?
Yeah.
I love project management tools too. Yeah.
Yeah, so we have this big sort of treasure trove of footage from this YouTube channel that we've basically been shooting on an iPhone for however many seasons. And we recently hired this like 19-year-old kid from LA on Upwork and just said, hey man, can you go through all this footage and just start making TikToks? We don't know if the TikTok channel is going to work for us, but we just want to try it. And he's just been churning out all this really great content from stuff that we already have.
Yeah, game changer.
Yeah, take what you've built and don't reinvent the wheel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One question is, what are some of your best tricks to quickly build a large email list? And the question is that what you want to do as well?
I think you do for sure. I think a big email list is great. It's so high ROI and a nice personal channel. We're big on this, as I said before, and I think I may have mentioned this, but that those collaborations with other adjacent brands are really how we grow our list. So as I said, we'll partner with 3 or 4 other brands. We'll each donate a product, and then we'll each email our list individually and say, hey, we're doing a giveaway. You can win a goggles from Glade. You can win a jacket, skis, whatever. And if every brand does that and they're all reaching out to 30,000 people, and we're directing them to one landing page, then all of a sudden we're each getting 7,000 highly targeted people added to our list from a pretty low lift exercise.
Yeah. Do you use influencer marketing? And Amobi, you are going to jump into?
Yeah, I definitely need to do a better job of my email growth hacks. I would say the collaboration is something that I'm consistently trying to work on. Being more consistent, because that's something that I struggle with. I would be like once a month and then like take a couple months off. So that wasn't really helpful for me. But the giveaway stuff has been really helpful. So for example, like signed jersey or like books that I'd recommend, like my top 5 personal finance books. We're going to give one away if you share this with a friend or 2. Different things like that have been able to help me.
Yeah, I think I would say for email that, yes, definitely want to grow the list, but also make sure that list is healthy over time. And, you're not having like a 2% open rate or something, because then even if the list is 100,000 people, it's not really doing what you want it to do. And I think one of the ways to keep an email list engaged is, and I think Kurt, you said something like this earlier, is, really make sure it's valuable and it's timely and they want to open it. And the more that you do that, the more that you create a pattern in their mind that, oh, this is valuable. Kurt just emailed me and they probably have a sale and I've been looking for something. So it's setting up those kind of little moments of trust that then pay off later.
Yeah, we clean our list so diligently. If you haven't opened an email from us in I forget the number, call it 6 or 7 emails, then you are gone from our list and we'll never email you again. And I think that helps with our engagement scores. And again, sort of just getting high up in the actual inbox and out of the promo box. That's super helpful. But something else we do that's an interesting sort of email hack, I guess you could call it, is when I do send those emails, I'll often ask a question. So I'll say like, hey, are you a skier or a snowboarder, for example? And that's a great way to get people to reply to you, so that next time I email them, A, it is going into that inbox, but B, we already have a dialogue going. So let's say, oh yeah, like I already responded to this. I know who he is. So we've found that has been really successful. Yes,
that's a great hack. We've done that. I've done that in the past for webinars. Instead of signing up, you reply if you want to attend. And then that's it. Like that dialogue has already started of, oh, what do you hope we ask or we talk about during this? And it just helps create that kind of start of the relationship.
And you can get data out of it too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We've gotten so much of that. And then, you're able to flag it as like, oh, they're interested in XYZ. And then for the future for targeting too.
I love the segmentation and asking specific questions so you can send targeted messaging, as well as removing people who are disengaged. Those are great tips. I also, thinking of partnerships, have also sent out, shared messaging around events or around a promotion that we put together a bundle of things together, and you're offering it to multiple lists. So each of your partners sends out an email and adds to your email list based on that joint partnership or JV kind of marketing or messaging that goes out to your list and their list to co-promote. So that is one way to kind of grow as well. If you find people who are very large, have very large lists to partner with you, that can be helpful. And somebody had asked if everyone on our panel can share and chat your social channels. And I'm personally on LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, Pinterest, and YouTube as at Janice Drew for most of them. But others, please post a chat, or you can find people's profiles, I think, on our platform here with the Goldcast platform. And then someone else mentioned that their startup is doing a video-based chatbot like Instagram and allowing for massive personalization. So I'm curious, how are you all using video tools? Are there specific tools that you're using other than YouTube?
We are not. That's super interesting. I would love to hear if anyone else is.
So for me, I use Curastory. So it's like specific to athletes, and it's kind of like a platform that allows for myself to find different sponsors without kind of having to do the groundwork ahead of time. And then there's like different apps that I use, like InstaShot, and different ones that like will use AI to kind of edit because I don't have time, and sometimes branding on a budget, I want to be economical around paying editors. So that's kind of the platforms that I use.
You can also edit video in Descript. It's great.
What? Oh, what? And you said this stuff is free too?
It's low cost. They have a free version, and then there's like a paid version, but it's totally worth it.
Oh yeah, most definitely.
But yeah, in terms of video content, I think it's one of those huge ROI things. If you say you film a 10-minute video, within that is 10 social posts too. And using platforms like Descript, I've used Headliner in the past to kind of cut those down. And I think maybe a tip is like, no one's going to look at the details as much as you are. So done is better than perfect, especially when you're bootstrapping. And, it doesn't have to be a Steven Spielberg produced video. A lot of times the like scrappier ones like end up doing way better.
Our best social media ad ever is a video of me taking a selfie on a chairlift and talking into the phone. And that was after doing like a ton of like really high level studio shot video. And the one of me on a chairlift did the best.
Yeah.
I just jumped back to the poll, and it does look like it jumped up to kind of 30% interested in budgeting, 30%, 37% promotional hacks, 30% best free or cheap tools. Going back to budgeting, I'm curious, how your budget has evolved. What was your initial budget? Probably zero or close to zero. How has the budget evolved, and how have you kind of managed that trade-off between using free tools and kind of transitioning to paid tools? Amobi, do you want to jump in first?
Yeah, so for me, I went about it all the wrong way because I was so excited to start. I really didn't really give myself a budget because I had capital. And then I realized if I really wanted to continue to go down this path and like actually build a sustainable business, I had to have a budget around my marketing. I had to have a product that I was actually going to, sell to the demographic that I was trying to serve. Like things that you're worried about, like I have to have a perfect logo, the website, all that stuff is not really, I don't want to downplay it, but it's not the initial thing that you need to focus on because you can always iterate, but you have to focus on how am I going to build my community? How am I going to, like, what product am I going to have? And then how am I going to build the foundation? So when that scaling opportunity does come, I'm not overwhelmed. So that's been my journey. And then now budgeting tricks that I use and that I do, I use Airtable and I use Excel, Google Sheets to kind of map out roadmaps and content strategies. I have a operator. He's like, I call him my streamliner. He helps systemize and process everything. So because I'm more of a visionary, I have ideas and I go left, right, up, down. He's like, nope, straight line. You got to stay on the straight line and then kind of go from there. So I would say, kind of map out your goal, your vision, all that, and then have like an accountability person to help you stay on that track.
Yeah, I would echo that. I've mostly worked under kind of like a zero-based budget. So any costs added to the marketing stack have to be justified, and you have to kind of propose alternatives and consider, okay, I could use this tool, or I could, spend an afternoon building something in Airtable, Zapier, and Google Sheets. And if it does the same thing and you already are paying for those tools, then it's probably worth the time and you don't need like the fancy tool that does it. But if it's a tool that can't do what those things do, or like the alternatives are really expensive and like a time suck, like editing video, like Descript or Headliner is going to cost you $10-12 a month. The alternatives are like, you have to learn Premiere, and those are really hard and not user friendly, and you're going to waste a ton of time.
That's true.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think when I think about like marketing budget, I think about just knowing your numbers, right? I think it's really about understanding your cash flow forecast for the next 12 months and what you can spend and what you can't. Because if you don't have the money, you don't have. So, if you can't get one marketing campaign off the ground, then, you might have to go walk down the street and try to sell a pair of goggles to someone. Like that's just sort of how it goes. Certainly in the early days, our budget was zero. And you just sort of have to hustle and figure it out. So I think, frankly, the most important thing to think about when you're thinking about your marketing budget is like your product margins, is your head count, is everything else. Because once those things are more optimized and streamlined, you have a lot more wiggle room in the marketing. Like we're fortunate because we sell a high margin product, whereas a lot of our competitors are stuck selling a product that doesn't have a lot of margin built in. So they can only spend so much on marketing. So getting the fundamental pillars down for your business will sort of make everything else hum along a lot easier.
Yeah, I think early days using a Google spreadsheet or Excel spreadsheet and Google Docs to track what you're doing and making sure you do know your numbers and looking at it regularly is key. And as you scale, having the data talk to each other so that you're able to see in real time, is the campaign that you just ran bringing in dollars, and how long does it take to bring in those dollars? I'm curious if you're using any tools now to do that measurement and tracking.
We're using a good old-fashioned Excel sheet.
Still using spreadsheets?
Yeah, I mean, we're certainly using like tracking pixels for everything and anything we can, as well as the sort of post-purchase survey to get that sorted. For measuring cash flow and figuring out what marketing budgets are, it's Excel.
Yeah, Google Sheets and Airtable for me.
Yeah, Google Sheets. Also going to say Google Data Studio plus Google Analytics if you're using it. Great tool. The learning curve's a little steep, but you can actually create really nice like analytics reports pretty seamlessly. That auto update as well. That was something I found last year. Didn't even know it existed, and it's great.
I know we're getting close to the end of our hour, so why don't we wrap up going around with any other advice you'd like to share, a key takeaway that you'd like the audience to remember as they think about bootstrapping and brand on a budget? Amobi, you want to start?
Yeah, thank you for having me first. Lastly, but I would say the most common form of marketing is word of mouth and strong reputation. So at the end of the day, there's going to be a lot of different trends that people will say. You got to get on this platform. You got to use this service. But at the end of the day, it comes down to reputation of the company or product that you have, and then word of mouth of the people that are already in your community or that are already using it. And if you have those two down pat, everything else will just be like a snowball effect of what you want to do moving forward.
Yeah,
Danielle,
I would.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think your number one marketing channel is having a good product. Besides that, I think there was a few tools I didn't mention that I did want to bring up. We use Facebook ads library to spy on competitor ads. Huge, super helpful just to see what copy they're using and what's working for them. We use a tool called Mention to scan the internet for mentions of our brand. So we can step in and like reply to comments and forums and stuff like that. And then Canva for graphic design. They're all super cheap.
Oh, yeah, Canva's.
Canva. Canva
Yeah.
gets so much hate. And I don't understand it because it's like
I love it.
one of the best apps out there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would also echo what Kurt and Moby said. And I would also say that like good marketing doesn't have to be complicated marketing. I am also a big picture thinker. So something I do to rein myself in is just say like, what would this look like if it were simple, and go from there. Like, how is the simplest way I can, what is the simplest way I can do this? And does it, is it in line with what I'm trying to achieve?
I think that's a great note to end on in terms of thinking through your what works for you. And thank you all for joining this Brand on a Budget panel. Hani, did you want to wrap us up?
Yeah, thank you so much to you all for sharing your expertise. Great conversation. Thank you to all the attendees for watching and participating. Really appreciate everyone's time and interest. At this point, we have, I believe, one more round of panels and events left for the evening. And then we obviously are continuing throughout the week. So just like I mentioned at the top, you can head to the agenda tab to see the events that are going on over the next few days. But yeah, thank you again to all of our panelists for your participation. You guys can either just close out of Goldcast or switch to Backstage. But yeah, great panel. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.